everyone. Welcome to the last installment of ANCOR's Grassroots Best Practices series. I'm Doris Parfit-Claude, ANCOR's Government Relation Manager, and today I will be talking about in-person advocacy techniques. To give you some ANCOR member perspectives, I am joined by Cindy Mahan of Friendship Community Care in Arkansas, Donna Martin of Community Providers Network of Rhode Island, and finally, both from Kansas, we have Chad Van Anden of Johnson County Developmental Supports and Jerry Michaud of Developmental Supports of Northwest Kansas. But before we get to the fun stuff, we have some basic housekeeping. The key point is audio is coming through your computer, so remember to check if your speakers are on. We will take questions at the end of the webinar, and finally, we will send out a recording of this webinar through the ACC afterwards. So, why do any of this at all? Congressional offices take advocacy outreach that takes effort and time more seriously than easier options such as email. So requesting an in-person meeting is a lot of effort because of all the back and forth needed with schedulers. They know you mean business when you take the time to meet them. And when a lot of people do it on one topic, the office really has to pay attention. That's your why. One of the definitions of the word campaign is a series of actions intended to produce political or social change. So an advocacy campaign is inherently a strategic undertaking. It doesn't mean there's no room for spontaneity, especially if you have a short turnaround time, or that you have to take a bunch of staff and make them live in a war room year-round. It just means that you need to spend some time thinking of what solutions you want your elected officials to help you with, and how you can build your case before you start reaching out to them. So the items that we've shown on this timeline can help you do that, and you'll be able to see it when you download the slides later on in greater depth. We're not going to spend a lot of time on the slide that we're on right now. I just wanted you to have an idea of the different menus of actions. Ideally, you'll be able to use these ideas from each category so that your advocacy is well-rounded. ANCOR members have been taking a lot of grassroots action with the healthcare debates, so I think those are the voices you will benefit the most from. So as a result of that, I'm now handing the mic over to our first speaker, Donna Martin. Take it away, Donna.
Thank you, Doris. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Donna Martin. I'm the director for the Provider Association called Community Provider Network of Rhode Island, and I'm going to spend a few minutes talking to you about 4 strategies for building relationships. The first that I think is always important to remember is that all politics are local. I come from a small state where, in addition to our 2 senators, we have just 2 congressmen. So admittedly, it is easier for me to cultivate deeper relationships with this number of people. But that being said, I still have to put the time in. While we all spend a lot of time with our state senators and reps, and to a lesser degree with our federal delegates and their staff, we should also remember the staff of the local federal offices. Sometimes this does not feel as glamorous as DC advocacy might, and it doesn't seem as productive as state-level lobbying, but these staff are generally very accessible and can also navigate other state systems more effectively or efficiently than their federal counterparts. They also have regular contact with their bosses and can be a resource to you at home. Building those personal connections makes a really big difference, and it's best if you can do it in person, putting a face with the name. Where the familiarity approach can go wrong is evidenced in this example. A couple of years ago, my association was organizing a letter writing campaign, and I found that the employee of a member sent a letter to his senator, but the letter was way too familiar. He talked about things like, we met at such and such, you were walking down the street, your mother knows my father, those kinds of stories. This 6 degrees of separation approach might be okay in person, but probably should not be sent in an issue-based letter. It felt way too gratuitous, and it felt like the writer was trying to exploit the familiarity, and that diminished the message. So while I'm saying to you that it's important to make personal connections, consider how the receiver may take this approach and be thoughtful in your application of it. The second strategy is to get to know the staff on your issues. Whether you're working with your state or federal electeds, a key tactic in cultivating relationships with them is to get to know their staff who work on your key issues. One of the most striking realizations I've ever had was a day many years ago When I was in Washington visiting my delegates and suddenly realized that they are bombarded with dozens of people every day who are just as passionate about their issues as I am about mine, I was completely overwhelmed at the thought of that, and it prompted me to take a step back and think about how do I get my issues noticed, not in a flashy way, but in an honest broker way. So I thought about how best to make an inroad and began focusing on the staff. Since that time, I've gotten to know the key staff members very well, and I am able to go to them directly when I need support from the senator or rep on an issue. They know me, they know my association, and they know many of my members. I call them periodically with updates on issues that we are following, and they even call me when looking for info regarding the impact of a particular piece of legislation or federal policy. By focusing on the staff, I'm always able to get an appointment when I'm in the district, and they are generally able to give me a fair amount of time. They follow the local issues, and we can have a deep conversation about the array of struggles my members are facing. It is essential that you impress upon them the importance of your issues and follow up with them when you're looking for specific action. An example I'd like to share is relative to a state policy issue, which we all know the federal delegates don't like to get involved in. In 2008, Rhode Island was developing its first global waiver, an all-inclusive 1115 that sought to bring all health and human service departments under one umbrella. The broader advocacy community was ballistic about this proposal and the required Medicaid cap that came with it. In an effort to put some stopgap measures in place for IDD services, I approached my senior senator for help, and through the work of his staff, eventually got him to pen a letter to CMS asking that the IDD community be given some special consideration due to our population's unique needs. He not only sent the letter, but he got the 3 other Rhode Island delegates to sign on. It was an exciting and educational experience for me to learn just how impactful these relationships can be. Because they knew me and deeply understood the issue at hand, they were willing to take very specific action on our behalf. So lesson 3 or strategy 3 is to go in with a specific focus. It's important to think about the nature of your visit and plan an agenda accordingly. You should consider, A, is your visit informational? Is the conversation about what's new in IDD services at the federal level or back home? Are there trends or initiatives you're concerned about and following? This can be especially helpful for newly electeds as it orients them to you and your issues. Provide a packet of information for them to reference and contact info so they can readily reach you. The second possibility is, are you asking for general support? Bill number X is progressing and we really need your support because, or something like the DD Act is up for reauthorization and we'd like your support to reauthorize and sufficiently fund it to maintain the related elements of service advocacy and development. That's more of an open-ended, bringing their awareness to a specific legislative or policy issue that you would like them to take some action on at some point. The third possibility is, are you asking for specific action? Dear Mr. Congressman, we're advancing bill number X and really need you as a co-sponsor because. An example here comes to me when I think about the work that ANCOR did last year when we were promoting the Disability Community Act. One of my congressmen signed on as an original co-sponsor because I was able to meet with his Health and Human Services staff and take the time to thoroughly explain the bill. He advised his boss of the importance of the bill, and the congressman readily signed on. On the same issue, in another office, I targeted the HHS and labor staff because I knew the labor component would be a key driver for this particular senator. The HHS staff was very clear on the issue, and the labor staff readily came along because of the connection and relationship we shared. In all of these cases, you have have your facts clear and be concise. Focus on 3 salient points and offer a balance between data and anecdotes. And be outcome and solution focused, and don't just lay your problems at their feet. The fourth strategy I'd recommend is to consider when to meet as a group versus meeting solo. It's often beneficial to meet with your senators and reps, constituents in tow. Bring people with you because it helps to put a face with the issue and it keeps it local. From the association perspective, in every meeting, I connect the dots between which of my members present are in the delegate's home district. If you're there representing a specific agency, the same applies. Try to identify who's employed or served in the district, or better yet, who might live or work in the same town as the senator or rep. This usually gives the official something to hold on to and can set the stage for a more comfortable conversation. However, sometimes it can be more effective to meet one-on-one. For example, if you're building support for a specific ask, it may be easier for the staff member, or the elected for that matter, to ask questions one-on-one and not fear appearing to not be knowledgeable on your issue, especially as it pertains to some of our rather esoteric issues. So to wrap up, my 4 recommendations for building relationships with your federal delegates include: first, remember that all politics are local. Find points of commonality to break down the walls and help everyone get to a greater comfort level. Second, get to know the key staff on your issues. They have more time to attend to you than their boss does, and they have the ear of the decision maker you're trying to influence. Third, go in with a specific focus and tailor your agenda for clarity and greatest impact. And lastly, know when best to meet as a group versus one-on-one. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. So now, thank you for these tips, Donna. They're great. And now I'm going to pass it on to Chad and Jerry.
Hi, this is Chad Von Onen. I'm the Executive Director of Johnson County Developmental Supports in Kansas, and I'll let Jerry introduce himself here.
Thanks. I'm Jerry Michaud. Glad to be here. I'm President and CEO for Developmental Services of Northwest Kansas. Glad to be here.
Jerry and I are going to follow up a little bit on what Donna talked about just a moment ago and talk to you about our Kansas experience. Kind of twofold. One, how we've developed different systems within the state to focus on grassroots advocacy. I'll talk about that a little bit, and then Jerry will give you some of the real-life examples of some of the impacts and stories that we've had from around the state. So first of all, similar to what Donna mentioned about advocacy at the local level, I think one thing that's always important to remember is that the skills you use with your local elected officials really apply to any elected official you would be speaking to. And so I think that's a good piece to remember. The other thing, just at the very beginning, is relationship building is critically important in all of this. And most importantly, thinking about how you can develop relationships with your elected officials prior to asking or needing something from them. And so that's really been a foundational piece of what we have looked at in the state of Kansas. And so we started from our state association InterHab, which years ago developed a strategy for local networks of advocacy in communities and regions of the states. These focused on engaging those that were recipients of services and their family members and service providers. From there, we developed a framework for educating legislators and candidates that we called Developmental Disabilities 101. As I'm sure many of you are aware, elected officials or candidates from across your states may not be very familiar with what we do and the folks that we support. And so this was a way for us to have an entryway into inviting people to our agencies to visit, to see what we do. And sometimes we would share these over lunches or coffee as well. From there, InterHab, again, our state association, was really has acted as the place that we would share information statewide to try to maintain a consistent message. I'm sure, as you can imagine, consistency in messaging when you're working on statewide or federal campaigns can be very difficult. And so the state association for us has acted much in the way that ANCOR acts for us at the national level. We've held trainings over the years regularly with advocates and self-advocates who want to be more engaged. It's a program that we called Grassroots Advocacy Leadership Academy, GALA. And so there would be frequent classes where people would be able to learn about how to advocate and again, tying back to what Donna said, some consistent pieces there about best approaches and strategies that they can use with their elected officials. From what we have now developed over the years, we have across the state these regional networks that are very effective in delivering a message to their elected officials. We also have through InterHab a few things that I think you might be interested in learning about. We have regular issues forums for our state association membership where we talk about governmental affairs issues. We have a weekly governmental affairs call to keep people connected and up to speed on what's happening both in the state and at the federal level. Recently, with all of the issues that we've been experiencing at the federal level, we've created a federal task force that is engaging our members of Congress. And a couple of other things that we do annually that have also been effective outside of the regular relationship building. We do, much like many other states, a day at the Capitol and a day that we call Push Day in Kansas when legislators return from their recess. We descend on the Capitol and have one last push for our issues. And so it gives a chance for people to work with their elected officials in Kansas on issues that are important to them. And so that's a little bit of the foundational and background of what we have functioning in Kansas, and I'll turn it over to Jerry to share some more stories.
Sure. Well, let me begin by saying that, I believe at the heart of every true leader is the desire to do the right thing. That may not play out always when you throw the politics into the mix, but I believe at the heart folks do want to do the right thing. Unfortunately, in our world, in the IDD world, it's complicated by the funding mechanisms as well as the policy implications because there are such great consequences and difficult to get your mind around if you don't live in that world. I believe also from our elected officials' perspective that doing the right thing is sometimes a pretty tall task with the rapid-fire competing interests that demand their time. All of that leads to what I believe has been said multiple times on this call about the importance of building relationships and helping to shape perspectives and understanding about who we are, what we do, and the importance of all of that. So that advocacy has been identified a number of times here already on the call, but it might be a simple phone call. It might be an invitation to come and tour, but I believe it really should start before there's the need, before something is compelling action on the part of the legislator on a particular thing. So that when possible, ought to be a preface to our asking for action or their help. I believe it's important that those elected officials, in that process of us educating them and showing them and demonstrating what we do, that we become the go-to people or the go-to organizations when it comes to matters relating to IDD or, in many cases, Medicaid and the Medicaid waivers, that they come to us when those issues bubble up on their plate. But that takes time. And the fruits of this entire effort are not 100%. And what I wanted to share with you was our efforts to reach out, and I noticed in the slide, early in the slides, there was a photo of one of our representatives from Kansas who was pictured with some of the ANCOR governmental affairs staff, and that really grew out of what I see as important in facilitating and remaining connected with our elected officials. Oftentimes there will be a schedule of town hall meetings, or in our case we cover a pretty large, mostly rural part of Kansas, and those town halls can be anywhere and everywhere from a community of 300 to 30,000. And so staying connected on their schedules is an important thing as often as you can do it. And so we had such a town hall meeting with our representative, and there was a piqued interest because we were specifically on the Affordable Care Act and the repeal and replace discussions that have been happening of recent. And there was a real interest there it was a natural connection point as they desired more to plug them into the resources there in D.C. Through this association, ANCOR, and so that was very, very helpful. But as we have done our work both with our congressional House members and members of the Senate, that kind of took a different twist than unexpected twist, I should say, from one of our senators, Senator Moran. And so I wanted to spend just a couple of minutes just telling you about that. Perhaps you all have experienced something similar in the relationships that you've developed with your representatives and senators. But in the days preceding the Senate vote on the Affordable Care Act, which to many's surprise failed to pass, not to mine only because I'm so grateful that it didn't, because the implications we all know would be terribly challenging for all systems across the states here. But we knew the stakes were high. We had reached out to our Senator Moran through those town hall meetings, and in the process, that morning after the vote went down, of course, he voted in favor of it. I'm not trying to put him on the spot, but he voted in favor of its passage. But this is where politics and reality kind of collide. I believe that they did not want this to pass, and Senator McCain kind of took the bullet on this one. But Representative Moran, or Senator Moran, had called me the very next day. To my surprise, it actually came across as an unrestricted call, of which I was ready to throw in the trash, thinking it was a salesperson from someplace I didn't know. But I took the call, and he explained the vote. That to me was just very surprising, that he would reach out to me to try to help me understand that he understood Medicaid was bigger, or our issues were certainly unique when you consider the big Medicaid discussion and the fact that it has a big bullseye on it for reducing costs on the federal level. So I just wanted to share that the fruit of our efforts pays off when our elected leaders know and understand us and better know and understand our issues. And so I wanted to just encourage folks to continue on that path. We have to, particularly, as we represent so many people who absolutely need us to join their voices, but to carry their voices in many ways on such matters as this. So, as I kind of wrap up my piece here, we've got to start building those relationships no matter where we are on the continuum of elected leaders, and frankly, you go through another election cycle and you have to pretty much start it all over again. But it's a great foundation to build on. Our relationship with Senator Moran goes clear back into the early 1990s, and those things, they do come to serve the needs of our folks when we're on task, and they better understand. And they look to us. So I think as far as messaging, it's always the KISS method. The KISS method, and I'll use the kinder version, keep it simple and straightforward. But the clarity, the simplicity, and the straightforwardness of the message helps to answer, I think, what the previous speaker said, that you have to identify what the issues are, the problems, but also to be a part of identifying the solutions and the path forward. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to share our perspective, Chad and ours for Kansas, and we hope it's been helpful for you.
Thank you, Jerry and Chad. So now I'm going to pass the mic over to Cindy. Are you ready, Cindy?
Thank you, Doris. My name is Cindy Mahan, and I'm from Friendship Community Care in Arkansas. And I think the main thing that I would like for us to think about today is the believing in change. I don't think that you can be a good advocate if you do not think that you can really make a difference. And I believe that a lot of our younger and our newer employees and cannot believe the different things that we've been through the years. And we must have and have-can-do attitude. The do attitude means that we know we can get this done. We know that we can involve our communities. We know that we're going to participate in fundraisers for our elected officials. We have to be known. But that attitude will take several paths. As you're aware, it's going to take the path for your families, your community, your business leaders, your funders, your ambassadors for your social networking. But you've also got to have the right people. And if people are not secure in being a strong advocate, then you don't have the right people in place. So I think that we have to we've always got to pursue and press forward. The main thing, I believe, is passion. You've got to have enough passion to extend it to your family and your clients. If you truly love your job, and if your employee that you have hired to help push all this truly believes in making a difference and believes it can be done, then you're not only going to make a lot of difference in your community, but you're going to connect with your families, your community, your state and federal payers. But that passion, as you can see on this young lady, has to be there. And a lot of experience in the years sure can push that along. Guys, it's about relationships. And this picture actually shows our governor and a young man that works here with Friendship. He has a CPA. He's getting a CPA, in fact. He is working as an intern right now and working on a master's in health informatics. On the left of him is a business professor from our local college, and then I'm here. But we were there meeting the governor, making sure that he felt comfortable in being to be a strong advocate. And today, he goes into every opportunity that we have and also works many times with us on television stations and on our media, on our social media. But he is truly, truly a strong person that they can see that they can connect all of the services with. It's also about trust. And I think it's really important that your families know that you truly are so invested in what you're doing. The young lady on the right, family has been with us for 30 years. Frank on the left has been as an intern. But involvement in all of the community activities plus involving them in the advocacy. But their families are really the ones that we finally were able to get involved this year just because of the Affordable Care Act. I think that the families have to know that you're forward-thinking and they're helping to assure that their services will be there and that you are a committed leader. I think they'll follow you well if you continue to push them. You must engage in your community. These small endeavors, the guys on the left are actually part of our Razorback team, and also we have our quarterback in this picture. This was a fundraiser. This brought in many people so that it connected to Friendship, and so very quickly we connected with 200 or 300 people in order to see the services and were able to become advocates for us. On the right, the personal relationship that you have with your senators and your congressmen has to be there. Whether you're going into their offices, whether you're at home with them, whether you know the families, whatever. But those personal relationships will probably mean the difference on whether or not their vote is going to finally count for our system. Even though one of our senators did not vote or voted for the Affordable Care Act, he also knew this last time that if we were not careful, even with increasing the funding for people with disabilities, was not going to mean that when it came to the states that it would actually go in our pockets. So even though there may have been a bigger picture for some of our congressmen, they knew the detail that was going to destroy our community system. These simple pictures go to our congressmen. They go to our business people. They go to the state office. They go to our political leaders. They go to family tragedies. We constantly are working on the relationships with our community. If we have a tragedy happen in a family, it's not even a part of friendship, but has had some sort of connection with our company, that death may mean that we make sure there's a pecan pie there, or that we make sure that we have taken something, even though they may not have a child in our services, or they may not be a congressman, but they have connected to us in some way. So we keep them connected to us. Social media. First of all, there has to be one person controlling the social media. You've got to have your going in mind. You must know where you're going. We are using constant contact also. We have about 4,000 members of our constant contact group. We can message them immediately. We also have ambassadors on our social media that will share all of our stories. So that is all already laid out, and if something needs to go quickly through the media, we can use that. But first of all, secondly, don't forget it has to be filtered by one person. As a provider, we've taken a leadership role in making sure that this stuff happens. We have about 120 providers in Arkansas. So we took the leadership role that we were not going to take a chance with the changes in block granting or all the different changes that were being suggested. So we came up with about a 3-for-5 card, and we wanted everybody to know at the federal level that we are the community. And we pointed out that they've gone too far. And I think that was a specific message that you can't get away from. But on the back, family members, clients, whomever can fill out their name and as well as write down their stories. We did this for all of our providers, primarily because we wanted to make sure it occurred. Did they receive a lot of these cards? Sure they did. But I think it also was good because behind each card was an individual story. Our senators and our reps realized how many people it was affecting in Congress. I have never seen a crisis as strong as we've had this year. And having been in one other crisis in my employment with people with disabilities, when the Clintons were in office, which I will review some stuff in a minute, that we succeeded there too. So again, I do know that we can succeed. I do know that we make a difference, and you can't ever forget it. To make it easy for our other providers, we also, on the constant contact, we had it ready. It went out. The message was there. The other thing on your right, we were working on provider-led managed care. We had several providers that were having a lot of trouble with being able to express the changes to their boards. So in order to even help them, we set up binders of how you do it, what information they needed to know, what financial information they needed to know, and sent this to several of our groups so that they could replicate what we were doing and move along a culture very fast. Political connections. There are two senators on this slide. This is actually the Republican dinner that we have at Friendship every year, and our employees as well as our clients serve them. But it's also done very well. It's done on china. We all have aprons on. We all look like we actually are from a hotel. State officials are there. The ladies down below have state offices. We expose ourselves. We sell our services. They will have to come in to us. And that exposure certainly means that they know there are providers out there. Contribute and be part of the political process. We must continue to contribute. Are you contributing to your senator's fundraisers? I worked with the White House and the domestic policy advisor when the Clintons were in office. It's our success in saving Medicaid during those days occurred, I believe, because families in Arkansas did stories. We did calls from everybody that knew the Clintons. And also, we also took all kinds of binders into the White House with all the family letters and all the family pictures and left it for President Clinton to review. We knew friends. We had board members that had had the Clintons attend their daughters, all their children's weddings. We had a straight line to President Clinton. We also, and this may seem very simple, we also knew his aunt, who was an intermediate care facility assessment employee, and we would call her and ask her to get a message to President Clinton anytime that we needed. So you've got to know the deal makers. You can't assume that everything is going to happen, and that personal relationship has to be built many months before you get into these specific situations that we've gotten into. Senator Cotton and President Clinton have been able to help our state in many ways. And as I showed you a while ago, Senator Cotton was in our buildings. He comes to our Republican dinners. How did we actually get to know Senator Cotton? Senator Cotton's parents were in college when I was there. We called his family member and said, we just need to talk to Tom. For him to really understand the impact when he votes. So we were able to do that very quickly, and I was at a conference in Arkansas, and I got a phone call, and his assistant called and said, Senator Cotton wants to talk to you about the effects of the changes. So I quickly ran from the conference, got to a place that I could just talk with him, and this was, I think, a day or two before the vote. But those relationships, him knowing my face, him knowing that how long I've worked here, has been the key to my ability to be able to talk to Senator Womack and several of the others. But beyond that, we've got to develop champions. They have to be developed continually. I think that we were lucky this year that we came out as well as we did. We have to hold the line. Friendship has written a grant to develop champions in our community and to work with our legislature in order to give them new information. The past threats were probably the most serious changes that I have ever seen. So we can't sit back and wait. We have to continually fight and continually expose our clients, our board, and keep on the forefront that we will be there, and we want you to understand that, and I'm sure that you know that these three voted against the Affordable Care Act, and that they were the ones that, for the time being, have saved her situation. So when I go back to the front of my slides, it says you must believe in change. I know for a fact that President Clinton saved Medicaid. I know for a fact that these three champions right here have set a new pace for us. It gives us a little more time. And I just thank you very much, and appreciate y'all listening.
Thank you, Cindy. So, having heard these stories, we're now going to switch back a bit to the bigger picture. The next slides are meant to share new ideas we came across this summer, and also go over some of the more logistical and strategic aspects of in-person advocacy. Now, because ANCOR is a national organization, these tips will have a federal slant, but they can be used at the state and local level. As you've heard from stories from all three of our speakers, we've seen the importance of that interplay between the federal government and the state and local government. And we've also seen recently the importance of governors in the healthcare reform debate. So again, like, state and local relationships matter. Feel free to use all the ideas that we're going to discuss in all of your work. So the first idea that we heard about was the serial drop-in. We became aware of this technique through Alliance Colorado at the height of the healthcare debate. At that time, Republican Senator Cory Gardner was under a lot of national pressure, and local organizations wanted to make sure they were not being drowned out. The idea here is that an office would hear about a topic literally all day. In this case, it was the importance of Medicaid. So this technique of just having people sign up for time slots when they're going to randomly drop in on an office is an effective way to create volume, since it lets advocates keep control of their own schedule. People can come in, talk to a staffer for a few minutes, or just hand over a postcard, a letter, some form of message, and then carry on with their sweet day. If you're building a coalition, it's a lot harder for your partners to say no when you're just asking them to stop by an office with a postcard on their way to lunch. And next, we're moving on to town halls. The heat generated in town halls was a big reason why the healthcare bill stalled the first time around in the House of Representatives. It's why senators were taking so long to announce what their public policy was on the healthcare debate. So we've laid out some of the basics for those of you who have not done them before. And as you review the content on the slide, the very first decision point with a town hall is whether you're going to show up to educate the elected official or just show them that you're watching their every move. If you're going to educate them, the key takeaway is that you want to avoid looking intimidating or that you have an agenda. That way, the elected official feels that they're not taking as much of a chance when they ask you a question, especially in settings where they are the ones who decide whom they're going to call on. It changes from town hall to town hall, but especially given how confrontational the most recent ones are, elected officials are wanting more control over who they call and who gets to speak at their events. Now, on the other hand, if you're going to show force, if you're going to show that people are mobilized and they care about this issue, you'll want to do the exact opposite. You need your message to come through even if you don't get a chance to speak. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean that if you're showing up with a bunch of T-shirts with a slogan like no caps, no cuts, that you won't get a chance to speak. Again, it changes from town hall to town hall, and in some, you can sign up for questions in advance. But your odds are a little bit lower, especially in the current climate. So these are just techniques to get seen on camera, attract media attention, and again, show your elected official that while they might not want to engage with you, a lot of people care and you are there and you are in front of them. Site visits are also great, and at one point earlier when planning this webinar, Donna had sent me some talking points. So I'm actually going to pass the mic back to her so she can discuss her perspective on site visits.
Thanks, Doris. What I wanted to offer is that this is a key component in developing your relationship. When you can invite in your elected official, they have an opportunity to see you, to see the people that you support, the staff that work with them in real time, in real settings, doing the real work. It's highly impactful for people to see what we do up close and personal rather than a meeting at an office or some of the other techniques. The best way to structure this, I think, is when the delegates are home in their own districts, they want to make time to visit. Working with their local scheduler, you can invite them to a coffee hour at a home or a program location, or to visit someone supported at their place of employment. You really only need to ask for a half hour of time or for refreshments, have someone standing by with a phone for a quick photo that you can send back to the delegate and use for your own collateral. The sort of compressed time frame makes it more appealing for them. They can stop by on their way to or from other events. They can have this photo op session that sort of codifies the event, if you will, that you can use to show people that they are engaged. They can use to show people that they are engaged. And it is a positive, no pressure kind of visit. That's what I wanted to offer, Doris. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. So here we've listed a few other techniques. One of the on the congressional visits, and the key takeaway here is that your visits need a clear goal. So Donna, Jerry, and Chad and Cindy already went over a lot of this, but the key point I want to drive in is that have a strategy and also plan this well ahead of time. You know, it takes weeks, literally weeks. So for example, if whether you're meeting your home district or DC, you'll have to plan in advance, but especially in DC. If you're going to be in Washington for the Leadership Summit in mid-September, next week is when you would start planning. That's how far in advance it needs to be. And yes, in case you were wondering, that was a hint. Now, the other solutions we have, as Jerry alluded to, a lot of the problems that we have in policy with this field is lack of awareness. So people pass policies, legislators make decisions, budgets get cut because people don't understand how much various programs affect people with the disability community. They don't understand the role of the disability community, and they don't understand who's served, where they are, or even how many people with disabilities are in their state. So, and starting the education work now before you have something to ask, as Jerry mentioned, is a really fruitful technique. You know, it's very much like planting seeds. You don't see what's going on over the surface for quite a while. You're not even sure how much is going to grow out of what you've planted, but something will bloom if you keep doing it. On the other hand, we don't always have time to watch something grow. You know, to mix my metaphors a bit, sometimes you just need to shake the tree that's already there and see what comes loose. And this is when being loud and spontaneous and doing more of a show of force technique can make a big difference. If you cannot create actual volume, what we've got shown on the screen will actually create the illusion of it. Now, with all of this, I've said my piece, but remember that ANCOR is always there to help you with questions about strategy, about sample materials. www.disabilitysos.org, our Action Advocacy website, has plenty of resources you can use, and you can always just pick up the phone and contact us. I'm currently typing in my email address so that you all can see it and shoot me an email if you need help with anything. As all of our speakers have mentioned, we are very much at a crisis point in the services and the policy discussion moving forward. Medicaid will absolutely return on the agenda at some point. We just don't know how yet. So any work that you can start now is going to be incredibly useful. So now I'm going to open up the floor for questions. Type them in the little box that's to the left of your screen towards the bottom. While we wait for people to mail their questions, Cindy, Donna, Jerry, Chad, do you guys have anything to add? Last minute thoughts? Some additional wisdom to impart?
Doris, the only thing that I did not mention, I think, is that we had a lot of town hall meetings with our families. I think it's been a really a lesson on how quickly we can lose the systems in our state. So we are starting an advocacy system as soon as someone enrolls in our company. And so we will start trying to build that advocacy from the first day that our new clients enroll.
Doris, this is Jerry and Chad, and as I think Cindy had mentioned about social media, that certainly is an area where we're developing further. So that's a great point.
Excellent, and we actually did hold a social media webinar last time that I'll be happy to resend around if people want it. All right, as of now, I'm not seeing any questions in the field, so I'm going to give it one other minute, and if not, we'll wrap up the webinar. So, last call for those who are listening. I see someone who raised their hand. If you could look in towards the lower left portion of your screen and try typing a question there, you might have to select the recipient. But I can't actually see or answer a question unless it's like typed in. That's just the limitations of our technology. Well, since we're not getting anything, again, you have my email there on the screen, and we're going to thank all of our, oh, never mind, it came through. So Karen Walsh has asked, one issue we have is engaging families to become part of our advocacy. What advice or strategies do you have? Cindy, do you maybe want to take the lead on this?
This is Cindy. I think that you must, again, start as soon as they enroll and start, informing them how to be advocates. I think it's necessary to have that as one of your main areas that you set for your goals for your agency so that those families can move on through the system and move into the public schools. And one of the things that we're doing, and we have preschools, is that we not only, we follow our clients all the way through adulthood, so we don't usually lose them. And so we're working a lot on everything they need to know when they enter the school district, and then we are connecting with them through many, community activities. And so constantly we will have to give them the information to their congressman and what events are going on, and also exactly if there's anything affecting them at the state or federal level.
Thank you, Cindy. Anybody else want to weigh in?
Yeah, Doris, this is Chad. I think that's a really important question, and I guess for us in Kansas, one thing that we saw that really energized family members had to do with when managed care started, and it was a concern for loss of connection to case managers for the family's loved ones. And I think that kind of exemplifies what we've felt is important on engaging families. They have to understand how all of these different issues affect them or their families, and I think that's been one important reminder for us. It's the transition to managed care really heightened the grassroots advocacy in the state of Kansas, and it taught us a lot about how we message things, just sometimes based on the feedback that we would get from the state, where they would counter our message and kind of portray our issues as provider issues, is how they would describe them, that these are simply provider issues. that really gave families an opportunity to be more engaged, to say, no, these are issues that affect us and our family members. And Jerry?
Yep. I was just going to add, too, that Chad mentioned earlier in the presentation about these push days or opportunities for individuals supported and their families to come to the Capitol. Those have helped foster some of those, I guess I would say, initial steps of breaking down the barriers that I think families carry or create, right or wrong, that limit them by their own, their own perception that I'm only one voice. I can't affect change. I don't maybe feel as knowledgeable on a particular topic that I need to be. But it helps to break down those barriers. I believe it's hard, and there's still resistance, not to create some perception that we've got it all figured out here, but those kinds of opportunities we've found are helpful for individuals and their families.
Great. It doesn't look like we have any other questions, so I'm going to wrap it all up. Thank you very much, everybody, for calling in, for giving us the time to hear our members' stories, and thank you for our speakers for sharing so much information and for helping us out with this webinar. Thank you all, and this will be posted on the ACC within a few hours. Thank you again, and with this, I am ending this webinar.